So you have Laban in negotiation now. He realizes that Jacob has done great things for him, and it happens all the time. You know, we negotiate all the time, and so here's what happens. God tells him he's going to return one day to his land. Jacob knows this. And all of a sudden, Jacob tries to strengthen his position. In 29 and verse 30, you see himself, he says, "You yourself know how I've served you, how your livestock has fared with me." In other words, you know that I'm a man of results. Everywhere I have gone, you have been blessed. You know that. And so as the negotiations are going on, I can hear them in the boardroom. And Laban is getting very nervous. He is getting excited because he's going, "Oh no, it's going to be a big price now. I've had this guy for 14 years. I don't know what he's going to ask me now. What is he going to ask me in return for working for him?" And what does he do? He says in verse 30, or verse 31, "What shall I give you?" And he says, you won't give me anything. "If you'll do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it." He says, and Laban's going, "Whoa, what is he going to ask me for?" And he says this, he says in verse 32, "Let me pass through your flocks, and today, removing it from it every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black lamb, and every spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages." So what is he asking for? He's negotiating for the livestock that are rare. Because what color are sheep normally? They're all white, right? What color are goats? They're usually black or brown. Mostly all black and all brown. And so if you find these animals that are spotted, they are rare. And so Laban is thinking here, wow, I got a good deal going here. This is something that's going to work out for my favor. See, everybody in negotiations many times is trying to get the upper hand. And Laban and Jacob are two con men. They're going to con people. They have conned people before, and they will con people again. Laban conned Jacob. Jacob conned his father Isaac. And you're going to see this in the life of these men. It's going to come back and it's going to hurt their prosperity. So he is in a negotiation right now. And Laban says, this is not bad. And he goes on in verse 33, he says, "Listen, if you come into my flocks later on, this is how you will tell. If you see anything that is not spotted, or if you see anything that is not spotted or speckled in any of my animals, then you'll know I have stolen it." So he keeps negotiating. And I think Jacob thinks that he's thought this through. Because he thinks that his plan is going to work. Now this is a kind of unusual plan, isn't it? It's kind of a weird plan, isn't it? Because he believes that either his manipulation, maybe opportunities, are going to win the day. If he can manipulate the outcome, then he will gain the upper hand. And maybe God could overrule the outcome and he would still gain the upper hand. But he has to have something up his sleeve, because someone wouldn't just go into a negotiation and negotiate themselves down. So that's one of the things that is going on, negotiation. You see them negotiating, and one of the things you learn here is that Jacob's success is not going to be because of his scheming. Jacob's plan is not the thing that God blesses in this story. See, Jacob's plan, anytime that we come up and butt heads against God's plan, God doesn't bless us. You look at about God's plan for salvation. We're going to look at that in just a little bit. But anytime someone says and comes up against God's plan for salvation and says, "No, thank you, I'm going my way," you know what you're doing? You're declaring your independence from God. You're saying that, you know what, I'm going to build my own kingdom and I'm going to have my own rules of right and wrong. You know what the Bible calls that? It calls that sin. It calls that a rebellious heart. It calls that a heart that is not seeking after the kingdom and His glory. You see, I think Jacob here is a picture of a man who trusts more in his ingenuity of scheming, because we're going to find out later that God actually blesses this plan. It's an amazing plan, and it's kind of a ridiculous plan, don't you think? But he is blessed by it for some reason, but it's not because of his ideas. You see, the one thing about the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's not man's idea. We didn't come up with it. Why would we as Christians want to come up with a plan that starts out by declaring we are dependent upon God? I mean, if it was left to us, we would invent a religion, and we do invent religions where we are the center of that religion, isn't it? Every other religion other than Christianity is not about God coming down to rescue us. It's about us getting up to God. Whether it be Oprah, or whether it be The Secret, or whether it be Judaism, Hinduism, whatever it is, it's all about man raising itself up to the throne room of God rather than God coming down in His mercy and love to rescue us. Every scheme of man fails. Every plan of God succeeds. So that's the scheming part this morning, or this evening. You see, the renegotiation has taken place. And now comes the actual, implementation of that plan. Look with me in verse 37 through 43. Now look what happens here. You have to understand that the flocks have been split about 3 days' journey apart, okay? You have Jacob's flock over here on this side of the church. No, just kidding, not on this side of the church, but on this side. About 3 days. And you have Laban's over here, which Jacob is taking care of. And to get from here to there is 3 days. And then he says in verse 37, then Jacob takes fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled the white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. And he sets the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, in the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped, and all the black of the flocks of Laban. And he put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there, so the feebler would be Laban's, the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, camels, and donkeys. Let me ask you, did Jacob's scheme work? It did, didn't it? I just told you God doesn't bless human schemes. But it seems like God just blessed the human scheme. I mean, what's going on in this picture? I mean, you know, genetics is something really interesting. When Jonathan was born, we did the triple screen, you know, those triple screen tests where they test for Down syndrome. And each time that we had children, we were in risk for Down syndrome. When Andrew was before he was born, Andrew, I guess there was a question about something else going on, and we had to have an amnio because amnios can be somewhat evasive to the baby. But you think about all that we can do with, we can tell the name, not the name, the gene, or we can tell the the gender, that's the word I'm looking for, of the baby now. Not the name, not the gender. Right, you can't tell both. You can't tell anything like that. Right. Well, we were like you. We were first told we had a girl, and then the second time we were told we had a boy. But some people think that they can even choose the sex of their children today. I mean, genetics is amazing. And here Jacob has this keen idea of genetics. He's going to test his idea. And what does he do? What does the text says he does? He takes bark, or he takes a limb from trees, and he peels the bark off in stripes. And he believes two things. One thing he believes is that the bark has an aphrodisiac quality to it that will cause his lambs and his flock to mate. And that if they look, what they're looking at when they conceive and when they mate, that's the kind of calf, or that's the kind of goat, that's the kind of flock that is going to be bred. Now, does that make sense to you? Does that happen? It doesn't happen in humans, I know that. Just because you're looking at something doesn't mean that's what you create. And it doesn't happen in animals, does it? If you place something before an animal before he mates, doesn't mean that that's the kind of animal that's going to come about. Or you put stripes before the water trough, and you bring the calves up, and you bring the herd up, and you think, well, they're going to mate like this, but somehow that's what happened. And then after he was starting to get all these guys, and all these flocks, he started to put the strong ones, or the ones that were birthed in the fall, because they had 2 times of birthing, both the fall and the spring. And the fall were supposed to be stronger, but they had to go through the winter. And so he'd put the fall ones up, and he would make them look at the striped or spotted flock. And then for the weaker ones, he wouldn't do that at all. And it seemed like what all of this is going on, that God is blessing it. He used selective breeding. He used genetics. He thought he was ingenious in the way that he was manipulating the whole situation. There's only one problem. His method doesn't work. But it did. Why did it work? Because we said that God doesn't bless, and Jacob's success is not because of his schemes. Jacob's success is not because of the work of his hands here. It's not because of his schemes that he came up with his mind, and it's not because of the work of his hands to carry out his plans. But why? It seems like he is successful, because what does it say in the chapter? It says that he was increased greatly. He had manservants. He had camels. He had donkeys. He was rich.